I'd like to call the meeting to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Brennan.
Here.
Counselor Lavin.
I am here.
Counselor Peeler. Counselor Grimaldi. Counselor Gilat.
Here.
Counselor Petropoulos.
Present and accounted for.
Counselor Morocco.
Here.
Counselor Whitfield.
Here.
Mayor Valentino.
Here. Next on our agenda is a public hearing for the sale of city-owned property at 41 Lake Street. I'd like to open the public hearing, if anybody would like to speak on that issue. Okay, we'll call the public hearing closed. Next is a resolution authorizing the sale of 41 Lake Street to Downtown Winery LLC, and I believe that's the city manager?
Sure. So this is a sale of a property that was under a long-term lease to sale, and it is a partnership with the IDA and the city. So it is at the end of its lease, and the person that has leased it has requested to go ahead with that sale.
Okay, I need a motion. Councilor Gilat, seconded by Councilor Petropoulos. Discussion. Clerk, please call the roll.
I think you have.
Do we,
Wait,
pardon me,
excuse me.
do we know what the sale price is?
I don't have that in front of me.
Okay.
It's
It's,
part of the lease agreement from the initial contract. I can get it for you so you
well,
have it.
no,
Yeah.
that's all right, that's fine. Don't bother.
And
Okay.
this was, while he was leasing it, he wasn't paying taxes on it either, right?
Correct. It was under a lease, so it would go as a sale and now be his part.
Were you
property.
still here when they did this, Your Honor?
I was here before they did this. Yeah, and it was very contentious at the time because of contamination. Being an old
potential.
gas station, well, definitely contamination. And I think that's a lesson learned by the city in sale of property in previous years. So we're making sure the sale of this property is as is.
Oh,
And I believe the sale price cumulative over a period of time was 175. That's my recollection.
It's somewhere in that ballpark.
Councilor Morocco?
This property is going to go back to the tax roll.
It would go back on the tax roll.
Okay. Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Brennan.
Aye.
Counselor Lavin.
Aye.
Counselor Gilat.
Aye.
Counselor Petropoulos.
Aye.
Counselor Morocco.
Aye.
Counselor Whitfield.
Aye.
Mayor Valentino.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Next is budget discussion, 2025 budget discussion. We have a variety of questions that have been brought to staff before tonight. We have some information that was handed out tonight. And what I'm going to ask is when we reference any line items in the budget or any areas in the budget, we just please call out pages so we can kind of follow along. Councilor Petropoulos?
I had a conversation with Councilor Peeler early. He'll be here later, but I'll be speaking for him and for Councilor Grimaldi, who wasn't here tonight. Whereas we have not yet received a revised budget based on our previous meeting, I think we're all agreed in council that we want to see the levy go down. I think we're all agreed on that, and whether or not we're going about it the right way seems to be the question of the day. I would like to solicit support from council that we direct city management to see what a budget with a levy of 5 to 6% would look like. All right? This as opposed to slash here, cut there, you know, I'm going blind doing that. Let's see what it would look like. If, for whatever reason, that revised budget comes out completely wonky, there is a plan B, and that would be the mayor's suggestion that we keep the budget below the tax cap. So I ask council, will you support me in that we agree to direct city management in that direction and perhaps save us a lot of bickering and cutting in that, and let's see what that looks like. And if so, would city management be amenable to a revised budget at a levy of 5 to 6%?
Please, please go.
So that revision would be a reduction of about $1.3 million off of that. So if what the direction was, I would bring back what services or programs we would not do in the future years. But I would give you a wider list than that, so you could make some of those decisions. What you've asked me to do in the prepared budget was to lower the tax rate and to have the investments in infrastructure and other areas. That's what I proposed for you. That did lower the tax rate. It did increase the tax levy. But if you wanted to do that direction, we would look at reducing the budget by $1.3 million.
How do we all feel about that?
4 to 5%, just for clarification, would be around 400 and some $1,000 added to the current. So that would be around 8.8 to 8.9 million,
Yeah.
somewhere in there,
Yep.
on a tax levy.
Is there something that stops him from making a motion to direct the manager to do this?
We don't need a
Nothing.
motion, I don't think. Mr. Mayor, go ahead.
No, he's looking for consensus from council to provide direction, and I'm perfectly okay with it. Anybody want to?
I'm okay with the direction. My question would be, could we add more money from the fund balance?
So what I would come back to you with is how we would do that, maybe looking at revenues differently, looking at fund balance and other places. We were going to go through some of that tonight, but your fund balance, for which we just gave to you,
Right.
is down to 14.5% for next year, which is just in that range. So I would be very cautious to go much below that with your fund balance.
But you're not starting from zero on the fund balance. You have a current fund balance that, last time I heard it described, was somewhere in the $15 to $16 million range.
So the estimated fund balance to roll over in 2025 is on the piece of paper that I gave you. The fund balance will be $4.2 million total. And then with that, that's 14.56%.
So your budget would increase the levy. I don't remember this council ever voting to tell you to lower the tax rate as a goal. This has always been a discussion from our first meeting on to lower taxes. And the shift in nomenclature to tax rate is a trick in my mind. You can lower the rate and still take $2 million more from the public next year. That's not a tax. I don't remember that direction coming from anybody on this council. So I think we should stop that rate versus levy shenanigans. And I think when we brought up I brought it up at the beginning of our tenure here, that we keep the levy at 0 for this year, and I brought it up the 2 meetings ago that we go to 20 mil, to take 2 million off your current budget and ask you to come back. He could simply amend it. We're now directing you to come back at 1.3 or 1.4 less than you had proposed. And the direction is for you to use your professional skill to come up with the best operating budget under those financial terms, not to throw it back to this council as to choose between 18 different bad choices that they may or may not make in the right way to run the city the best possible way. That's what, I mean, we hired the city manager for the business acumen and professional acumen, not to throw it back to us. But I'm more than happy to go along with a redirection to at least 5% increase in the levy from last year to this year.
So just for clarification, because the numbers are in front of us, the general fund balance right now is 4.245. The proposed use of general fund balance in the current draft budget would bring us down to 3.246, which would then put us at 14.56%, which is in that range of 12 to 15%, which council has set forward for direction.
What is the current what I would say undesignated funds in the budget overall, not,
In the 25 budget?
no, in
20.
In your
Counsel, what-
accounts,
what
that's
do you-
sitting over at L&B, it was described a few months ago as 19 million. Then I know some of that has got future uses, but what is the current cash position of the city heading into the 25 budget?
Yeah, so the unassigned money that we would have in that account would be these three fund balance numbers. So the general fund, 4.2 million, the water fund's $1 million, and the sewer fund's 1.2. That's what's in the, that's what's unassigned at this point.
And the assigned are, that brought it from 17 down to that, are assigned to what purposes?
So a lot of them are capital funds, and then basically the 24 budget expenses and revenues. So the property taxes come in, those are assigned for the budgeted expenses for the year.
Right.
Other counselors? So previous motions on the floor were to reduce it 2 million or keep it at 0.
Right.
And those were defeated. Now we're having a discussion about a 5 to 6%, which could be a $1.4 million reduction from the current draft budget.
Yeah, I'd be more comfortable if you were more detailed with the direction you want the manager to take. You said one thing, she said, I'll give you some choices. What's the intention is, I think your intention is
I
expressed.
haven't
was to go-
provided any direction yet.
No, I was talking to the counselor. His direction was to take another run at it. Bring it back to us the best budget you can at this dollar amount.
He's asking you that question, Council Petropoulos.
Right, so basically, and again, I'm not overthinking it right now, but what I'd like to see is a revised budget with the levy brought down to between 5 and 6% and see what that looks like. Right now, we're proposing cuts here and cuts there. And, you know, we each have an idea of what we want to see cut and what we don't want to see cut. So when you come back with that budget, we'll have a better idea. The questions to ask, why do we need this? Or what's this all about? Or, gee gads, this is too expensive. You know, we got to have somewhere to start. Right now, we're dealing with, what, a 20% levy increase or something like that, last I remember. This would be more, I think, a realistic start. And if we can get that sooner than later, that would be very helpful. And then we can decide, you know, we want to see what it looks like first.
So I can do that. I do want to be clear on when I was given budget direction because that continues to come up. We had that meeting in April, and that's where I've gone back and reviewed the tapes over and over again to see what the direction was. There was not a uniform direction from this council. There was definitely disagreements on what that direction was. But the areas that we pushed in the budget focus was smart spending, wise investment, stable revenues, tax rate review. It wasn't tax levy, it was tax rate, which are two different things. And the focus was also because there was the increased value of the city. One of the things when we talk about value of the city or revenues, value on our homes, things like that do increase. I'm happy to give you what you're asking for. That will mean that some of those accomplishments will be taken off the table. So things like larger infrastructure projects, potentially staffing, those kinds of things will come forward. And that's okay. What I mean when I say then you'll have decisions to make is what direction do we want to go in hearing that from the city? If it's not maintaining certain services, then we don't maintain those services. I think you're at a point, though, where we have to have those critical conversations to say, you know what? We tried it. We can't do this, and we can't provide this to our residents, and that's okay. So that's just the piece to that, because that's what this budget does, is maintain your current operations without a lot of extras.
Councilor Gilat.
When we started this conversation way back whenever, I recall, we did start with tax rate.
You did.
Tax levy came into play after that, once you put your budget up. And then Chris was recommending 0 increase, and then we're 20%. Now we're wrestling with some figures. I think I think she is doing her job because we give her a direction of a percentage. She has to come back with line items of what she feels has to be taken out and still operate the city. And then it's up to us to make that decision based on our residents, because the impact is gonna be our residents and ourselves, because we're residents as well, but, so that's where this whole thing comes into play as far as being our budget, in my mind. That's how it works. I've already reached out and gotten some conversation with people in my ward, the different feelings, they're in different areas as far as how they think we should proceed. I think at 20% was beating in their head, and that's real, they just keep throwing that at me, which is fine. I think Jim's suggestions is a good place to start. I've been playing with numbers too, and I thought 5 or 6% would be a good place to start. I think zero's stretching it a little bit. I'm not sure you
agree.
can get there. I mean, I just don't think you can get there. Tom and I were talking also that, expenses are gonna keep coming up. I think we all agree on that. And I think, safe to say, and I've said it before, this council was in agreement, we need to attack the tax levy. We're all working in the same direction. I think sometimes people on the outside may see like we're against each other. We're not. We're just can't decide any exact number.
I
But we're
agree.
still working on that. It's the city manager's job to come back with, and comptroller, come back with, give us some suggestions, what you feel you can still operate the city with, and the impact, positive and negative. And then from there, I think we can get the really discussion of what we need to do and where can we go from there. That's my opinion.
And just so you're aware of the process, I will have the departments tell me what that is, because they are the ones, and they've already been asked to give it. We will probably look at our 3 major departments, because that's where a majority of our budget are. So we'll be looking at public safety and public works.
Sure.
And if that's the case, then we'll start seeing department heads here to explain
Yep.
what they can do with, what they can't do with, and the impact of their departments.
Absolutely. And that's some of the questions for tonight when we get into this, and some of the notes that we provided and the questions tonight. You'll have at least 1 or 2 departments here tonight that are just doing work in their offices until they're needed.
It seems to me that you could still do some playing with the numbers, meaning to say that you could still borrow more money from the fund balance and not go below the range. The range, you're at 14.54 if you were at 14 or 13.7. It's
So-
not that big of a jump.
It's not, but you have open contract negotiations,
Yes.
open lawsuits, open other things. That fund balance is your rainy day account. And I'm always very cautious on your rainy day account. I also began this budget process saying, I personally feel our range is a little low. Other municipalities have learned since the pandemic and have increased the range slightly. And so I would like to stay close to the top of our range as much as possible, but we're now within range. We're not over range.
I understand. Thank you. One other thing, though, to Mr. Petropoulos' original, I agree that we should at least try to come to the number that we'd like to raise that levy to instead of the 20.54 that it is now.
Other counselors? Okay, so, interestingly enough, that 12 to 15% has been stated that it's a state mandate. It's not a state mandate, it's something that council sets. And, doing some homework, 15 to 20 is more in the range of what the municipalities are looking forward in the future. I would not be wanting to sit across from us as the city manager or the city comptroller for one reason, not because we're trying to achieve a 4 or 5% increase. It's because, and we're asking the city manager to come back with her direction. If her direction, working with the department heads and the comptroller, comes back and it doesn't meet the majority of this council, we're not going to be able to push the budget forward. And this council has proven that we can't agree completely on what we want and what we don't want. So we could be sitting here, we got 15 days. We could be sitting here having that budget come back to us at 4 to 5%, looking at what is going to be provided to the city and what's not going to be provided to the city, and we can start a disagreement at that point too. I'm not against it. I'm just throwing the warning out there that what comes back, you might not like it. So we'll be right back here doing right what we're doing now.
Which means that we would have to start, if we want to keep going, we're going to have to just simply cut some of the things that are in this 25 proposal. And windows, just using the is one example. That would be our choice.
Whatever would affect the tax levy that impacts the tax rate. So I'm cautious in saying specific items because bonding, things that are in place already, doesn't impact the tax levy. So I'm just being cautious of picking out specific items without the professionals telling me how that impacts the budget. Councilor Petropoulos.
Your caution is duly noted, Mr. Mayor, and at the very least, whatever we've agreed or disagreed on, I mean, I don't think most of us aren't even really familiar with budgets. Now I've learned a lot. I think it's good, though, that we start with what 5 to 6% looks like, because we're going to do the same thing whether we do it tonight without or if we do it. And we have 15 days. When you had to write a term paper in college, oftentimes it came down to the last day and an overnighter, but it got done. So I'm confident that the mayor and this council will do what we need to do to compromise, bicker, whatever we have to do. And in the end, in years past, things have worked. I'm very hopeful that whatever the outcome, things will work and it won't be a 20% levy and people won't. So let's start with that. As I like to say, what you got to lose, Lautrec. So there we are. Let's just try that out. I have no problem seeing a revised budget of 5 to 6%. And I think we're all, I'd like to say, yes, caution notwithstanding, you're absolutely right, Mr. Mayor. But let's take it from there and look at what we get, and we'll go from there.
Councilor Gilat.
Just want to make sure, I think I know the answer, I want to make sure anyway, though. So if we can't come to some kind of decision, what date does it go back to your budget?
November 1st.
But it can't go back without an approval of the extension of the state limit. You can't take it to a budget that exceeds the state limit without a vote of the council to do that.
Correct.
Right, that's one of the reasons I was bringing up the
What you would do
reluctance.
is go into a default budget, which I would then set.
Right.
So for clarification too, and this is a question for you, City Manager, coming back to us with some level of reduction would be well beyond the 1.4 because, and just historically, what council has done before, they've asked for this same thing, previous city managers and previous comptrollers, and previous city managers and comptrollers have come back with a variety of lists of things that could be removed or delayed from the budget. And based on the majority of council going back and forth on those specific items, levy and tax rates have been reduced, but it hasn't been 100% agreement across the council on what gets removed and what gets left in. So I expect to see more than $1.4 million presented to us. And it's going to be up to this council to decide. And you can ask the city manager to put priorities to it in her and staff's opinion, but it's going to
That's
still
her
be up to
job.
council. It's her job, yes.
Yes,
But she needs to support a council to advocate for her job.
absolutely.
That's 100% approval across the council?
No, it doesn't need to be 100%.
Oh, I thought you said.
No, if there's 18 items and 9 of us get to 5 or 6%, 9 of those items get to 5 or 6%, we all might not agree on those 9 items. That's my point.
Yeah.
So if she just came back with simply 9 items and we don't agree on them, we're just going and rehashing this over and over again. That's why it's due diligence on city manager and staff's responsibility to come back to us with options so that the majority of council can agree on those options and drive whatever decision-making from there.
Your Honor, I've seen this done in the past too. Part of what we pay for in hiring a manager and the staff is the expertise in saying, if you have to run the city next year at this dollar amount, what's the best you can do? I've seen it. The first thing they come to, you've been here for it. The first thing they do is come back and say, we got to cut 4 policemen and 2 fire positions, but we're contractually obligated to that. And then the next thing you know, you get people in town saying, hey, you can't cut police and fire. And I'm not suggesting that we do it. There's a recreation department. We're one of 2 cities in the county that has a recreation department that runs at a great deficit, has not been fully itemized in its fully loaded things. And I think there's a lack of, part of the dynamic here is that because of our focus on a 30-day process having to do with next year's budget, we end up with no urgency the next year for reducing costs, looking for new revenues, and being aggressive about collaboration, other things that are part of the longer-term answer. So this is, I called it kabuki theater last time I was here, and that's probably a little unfair, but we are put in a position where the politics of the community are used against the council when all we're trying to do is say we want to live within our means. And that's a basic human condition for every household. And, that's why I'd say more than come back with a bunch of choices for us to make. We'll always make choices, but to come back with us and say, what would you do? How would you run the city next year if the amount is this? If this is what you have in your fuel tank?
Councilor Petropoulos.
Well, for one thing, we do have 30 days to get this budget set. However, when we look at the notebook.
16, Councilor.
Well, I'm sorry, you're right. Well, I have 30 days total, 16 left.
45.
We start in
April.
April.
First of all, I have complete confidence that city management will provide us with choices and options. Secondly, one thing we could start doing is, I notice we have future, wish lists already out. We could start talking about those sooner than later. We don't have to wait until 2026 to have a council discussion on what items that are going to be in that budget, are good or not good or can be changed. The idea is, and again, I've said this from day one, communication. So we could start earlier as a council and talk about what we see in 2026, 2027, 2028. These big numbers show up like, hey, that's not in this year's budget, but it's coming down the pike. So, this is a good, I say again, this is a good start. And, I don't know what's going on out there, and people are, talk is cheap, but let's start. Let's just do it and go from there. And I stay up nights too looking at this. So we'll do the homework. If we got to pull an all-nighter, we'll get an A in that term paper. That's all I got.
Just a little clarification, since this is my 7th term. In all those terms, I've never had any city manager come to us with a reduction of police and fire. It was council's decision one year to remove 2 positions. So just for clarification, that has never happened. And the other one is the professionalism of the city manager should not be in question at this point. The city manager came to us and gave us a budget on what she felt was accurate to run the city. So we're asking her to make a change to her professional presentation of what she feels the city of Geneva needs in 2025. And she's looking forward beyond 2025, if we've had conversations with her, to try to keep that tax rate and expenditures under control, instead of seeing a roller coaster ride of tax rate reduction, tax levy reduction, and then the next year you're paying for that in other ways. And the in-depth budget that I see addresses a lot of the issues when we talk about the DRI, when we talk about all the complaints we've had about weeding and how the lakefront looks, when we talk about infrastructure underneath the streets and what's going on inside there to be able to support the climate changes that we're experiencing. A lot of that is started to be, it's definitely not fully addressed in this budget, because it can't be, because we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars, but it is starting to be addressed in this budget. So I think it's well thought out. Is it painful? Yes. That's why I think the city manager has to come back to us with options, because I might want to make sure that all that DRI is taken care of, and somebody else might not want to. I might want to make sure that we take care of infrastructure on streets that are identified in 2025, and other councilors might not want to.
No disrespect meant towards the city manager. I'm a big fan. The only criticism that I'm working through my head through is the mishandling of interest funds that cost the city significant amounts of money. Everything else is about trying to break a habit here in which we argue ourselves in a position where we're the highest tax municipality in the region.
After this budget, we won't be.
No, that you're talking rate versus levy again.
Right.
Adding $2
Both.
million to your tax bill does not make you in any way change your position in the county as for the population and everything else. $2 million more in a year is $2 million more in a year.
I politely disagree with that one.
Well, the rate, yeah, I mean, we should have that discussion. The rate is a tool. It's
I-
not-
I
it's
don't
not the
disagree with
It's
that.
not the tax.
And the levy is the spending. I don't disagree with any of that.
It's not the
Counselor.
spending.
When you put us at the highest in the county, you don't have the facts to back that up.
The spending is 28 million or 25 million overall. The levy is what we're taking from the taxpayer. It's the taxes. And to change that and to claim we've lowered our rate when our assessments went up 50% is, numbers games. That's all I'm.
Nobody's playing games here. This is all serious. Counselor Gilat?
Okay. The conversation about the levies, let's leave the tax rate out of it. Because we've been talking about tax levy since we opened tonight. Let's just stay on tax levy. Because you keep going back to the tax rate, we don't need to. 'Cause
I agree.
let's stay tax levy. But I do know people that shop, try to live here, they're looking at tax rate. They're not looking at the levy, so. But either way, but we know what we gotta do. We just gotta, come back with your best shot and see if we can go from there, you know?
And I'm not laughing at you guys. My computer is restarting, and it just said your computer may restart a few times. So I don't know exactly as we get into some of these comments. Fortunately, Adam's computer is working, so we'll see what that's about.
So look over at the guy next to you and copy what he's writing on.
Exactly.
One more clarification, Counselor, I'm sorry, but
That's
the
okay.
recreation comment was not accurate either.
I'm sorry?
The recreation comment was not accurate.
Well, it's hard to know that in the way that we put out the expenses, how we credit the DPW work for the skating rink. We went through it 4 or 5 years ago in great detail with Matt Horn and saw that it would have been way cheaper for us to hand the keys to Hobart for hockey season and pay vendors to do the rest of the thing. But
Have
it
you had
was
that
never-
conversation with President Gearin or anybody on the Hobart staff?
Yes,
Because I have.
Yes, I have.
And it's not a handoff.
Oh, then let them build their own stadium.
But you said it's a handoff. It's not a handoff.
They have no choice. If we said to them, we're not gonna make ice next year because we're losing money and subsidizing the hockey program, they would gladly take over.
That's not being a good neighbor to our institution by any means.
Well, these are not
Having a
rainy-
conversation about it is one thing.
These are
Drawing the
rainy-
line in the sand isn't.
No, it's, we talked, we met with Vincent at the time. We've met with Guerin since then. These meetings have happened. They understand the dynamic. They don't want to be seen
Yeah.
as stealing the rink from the city, but they'd be glad to run it. They have a program that's
Those are
very
not the
important to school.
conversations I've heard,
Well, you hear different things from L&B than I hear too,
for
but
sure.
Can I make
Yeah.
a point of order?
Yeah.
Can we stay on track, please?
Counselor Brennan?
Well, they are conversations worth having, no doubt about it, because this budget conversation we're having tonight is only good for about 12 months, which is a pretty short window.
Yeah.
And it's gonna hurt a lot more next year and the year after that and the year after that. And if we wanna swallow that pill, that's fine, but don't forget the school taxes all went up too. This is getting to be an expensive city, and it's true that a lot of people are considering leaving. It's the same story. It's the same let's leave New York State exodus story, because it just gets more and more expensive. I recognize that it's a well-written budget. There's no question that Stephanie Newcomb and Amy Hendrick put a great deal of time and effort. Everyone did. I know that. And it is well-balanced, but it's still very expensive. So the public needs to understand that a large part of it is salary increases and cost of living. Inflation, as we all know, is still high, and we've suffered through it for about 3 years in a row straight anyway. It's not going to get better, so you can see that there's some impetus to at least look at this in a hard way. And it could hurt, I recognize that. If you don't pave Cherry Street next week or next year, I understand. And nobody wants to hear that. But the public does need to understand that if we're gonna cut things, which there is a large amount of sentiment for that, then it's gonna have to hurt. We all also have to remember that this is one of those strange situations where 100% of the population is not paying 100% of the levy. We've recognized this for years, but it still is a big emotional issue for a great many people. we're supporting lots of institutions. And I recognize that there's pilots in place and I recognize that there's agreements in place, but it's not the same as having the full tax levy by all participants. So again, we have to take a hard look at it, and I think I know where you're gonna wanna go, and I say still, we have to look at ways to reduce this levy even more. I'd like to go well below the tax cap.
About 5-6% to do that.
That'll be interesting to see, because it was 9.8, but I don't know if that calculation changed.
We're still working through it too.
Okay.
Working with the state and others
Yeah,
on
that's a lot different than the 5 or 6%, but, and just a quick question before we go to these questions. 4 to 5, well, what is just salary and benefit increase? Is that hit the 4 to 5% right there?
It'll
I'm
be
thinking, because I
close.
remember 500,000.
Yeah, it'll be close. It was in,
So just by natural negotiations that have taken
right
place.
here. So salaries in 2024, salaries and wages was 8.7 million. It's going up to 9.1 million
So you got 400,000 right there, which we talk about 4 to
out
5%.
of $22 million budget.
Yep. 4 to 5% is that right there. Okay,
Thank you.
ready? Here we go. The handoff.
Yes. So what you have in front of you, and we continue to put this on our website so members of the community can see it, is just information on the proposed budget because there's inaccuracies and it's also confusing. I acknowledge that. How we've structured this session is each week, the Friday prior, I collect all of your questions, information, and then put them forward to the departments. The departments then respond and will be in for that. So questions or motions, in addition to what we just talked about, for the next session, which will be on the 23rd, would be received by the 18th. And we have a lot of questions already for Department of Public Works. Department of Public Works will be here that evening. Just brief information on proposed budget, total budget increase, and that's a big piece. We keep talking about levy, we talk about other things. The budget as a whole is going from 19.5 million to 22.3 million. That's a 14.3% increase. Your tax levy increase going from 8.4 to 10.1. That's a 20.54%. So that's your levy increase. Your tax rate went from 17.26 to the proposed of 13.97. That's a decrease of 19%. And then amount of funding being utilized from the fund balance currently in the proposed, the safety coordinator for a 3-year cycle, 85,000, all one-time maintenance expenses, 839,500, and then the comprehensive plan update, which you added last time, 75,000. So that totals 999,500, so almost $1 million. Your fund balance expected to roll over this year, Adam went through that, 4.2 million in general fund, 1 million in water fund, 1.3 million in sewer fund. And then when you transfer funding out for your fund balance, you're expected 3.2 million, and that percentage turns to the 14.56. Also in front of you is a document that I'm gonna let Adam fully talk about because I can't see it at all, even if I wanted to.
Thank you. So I'll go over it very briefly. It's this spreadsheet here. It's got 2 graphs attached to it. So all this is the city financials in the general fund through the 3rd quarter. So I wanted to kind of just give everybody an overview of where we stand. This would be at the end of September of this year. So we've got revenues on top, expenses at the bottom. I've broken up expenses by category, which is typically how they do it at the state level, so I'm used to that. And then some of the larger revenues on top, we've got pilots, sales tax, occupancy tax, state federal aid, the property taxes, and then everything else falls under other revenues. So I've got 24 actual, 24 budget, the percent remaining, and then in comparison where we were last year at this time for the 23 actual, 23 budget. Couple notes here at the bottom. Sales tax, occupancy tax, we've only received the first 2 quarters. So even though it shows, sales tax 32.43% remaining, we've only received 50% of our payments. So that's good news. Same with occupancy tax. That's kind of right around where it should be, right about 50%. And then state and federal aid, I've got a note on that as well. A large majority of those funds are sent to us by the state in the month of December. So that's very much expected that it wouldn't, as the year goes on, it doesn't move the same way. So it's not every month we receive a certain amount. It's very cyclical. And in October we receive a payment, and then we receive quite a bit in December. And then for expenses, the main thing there under retirement, Social Security, health insurance is our retirement is actually, we don't pay that until December. So we pay that to the state at the end of the year. So you'll see that number, including health insurance and Social Security, is still quite a bit. It looks good because the expenses, you'd want those percentages to be high. In the revenues, you'd want those percentages to be low. So where we should be at the third quarter is about 25% if everything was completely equal throughout the year. Revenues at 23.8, expenses at 26.85. It's really about as close as you can get, which is good news. Makes me feel good as a finance person that we're in that range. And then all I did on the next 2 pages was just convert those into bar graphs. So just wanted to get that out tonight. I know we're here to focus on budget, but just wanted that information to be there. And if not tonight, happy to answer questions any other time. Email, phone, stop in. We can go over that.
Counselor?
I compliment, you're getting to the dashboard. I think we can all understand at some point, but I think the one thing I'd add to this approach is identifying anything that's 10% over or under plan, so that that can be brought to our attention earlier.
Yep.
The other question I had was, is that the money that goes out to pay debt service does not appear it is not levy money, is it, per se?
The money that we pay.
Paid, yeah,
the
debt
up,
service.
it is. Yep.
It is, so that if we didn't have this debt,
Sure would help.
you would, we'd be at 6 or at 8 instead of 10.
Yeah, you'd be in, I mean, you wouldn't have more cash because in order to do those capital projects, you'd have to,
Demonstrate.
yeah, and
the
that
limit.
would be difficult, but yeah, to your point, yes, that would be.
Okay, just wanted to make
Yep.
that point. Thank you.
Adam, on the retirement, we make, I see the payment is due in December, but we made another payment. Is it like twice a year? Or I'm just
No, so
curious?
that includes Social Security and health insurance. So that whole category, a good chunk of that has been health insurance and Social Security already that have been paid.
Which comes out in payroll every
Yep, that's
2
every
weeks?
2
Okay.
weeks, yep.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Ready for the 9
Yes,
items?
I think so, but I'm gonna have to look on with you, Adam, because my computer's
You
still
want one here?
loading. Oh, no, it's okay. I have the answers on there, or at least
Okay.
started. I have the questions. So the first question really was about in the city manager metrics. So we added metrics this year for the first time. And so the question was, in the city manager metrics, we put grant revenue breakdown. One of the things that will be coming to council before the end of the month is a breakdown of all of our grants. We had talked about it last month. We've brought on our new grant coordinator, and she's revising that right now. We met today on what information is going in there. Oh, boy. I'm getting new updates over here. So one of the things is what is in there. This is all city awarded grants. These are grants that we've written. We've written on behalf of the city. They may be in partnership with other other partners, or where we're a large co-lead on the application. So in 2023, we received the Clean Energy Communities Grant, which was for $10,000. The MAP grant, which was $180,000, and that grant goes to small businesses, but we administer that. Recreation Trails Program grant, which is helping with the trail program and the bridge to get that trail. It's the rail trail. Compost and food waste diversion grant, which was in conjunction with the town of Geneva and works with not only our vermiculture trench, but also with composting. Police traffic services grant for $3,600. Child passenger safety grant for $1,000. Ontario County Stop DWI for $4,500. Food waste diversion, which is also a partnership with the town for $19,500, and high visibility coordination for $6,500. In 2024, as of 10/10/2024, so this may be slightly different from your budget book because you got that before then. We've received a Bridge New York grant for $1 million, which will replace our one bridge in the city of Geneva. The LE Tech grant for police for $380,000, a Restore New York grant, which helps a business owner revamp their property for $1.5 million, and then police traffic services grants for $6,500. So in the current year, we're at just under $3 million in grant funding.
Is each of those grants give you a 15% administrative or not?
Not all of them. Some of them do. Not all of them do, especially in our partnership grants, depending on who is the lead applicant. So some of the Town of Geneva grants, they're the lead applicant, but we do have administrative support, so we have a position that we share. Some don't allow that administrative at all. Some, especially like our smaller grants, don't allow it at all.
So when you get the 15%, do you put it against the grant writer's salary?
The grant coordinator, she doesn't write grants, she coordinates them, but yes, that's where it's going.
That's
50% of her salary is budgeted as grant funding.
Great.
All right, next question. Fleet services for city vehicles. What is the approach we're taking to this, and how was this developed for 2025 budget? Who is involved?
Can you help us with page number, please, as we go through?
Fleet services won't be on a specific page because it's throughout. The grants one would be on the city manager's page. I forgot that you would ask for that, but the city manager's page is 28. Fleet services is throughout the budget. We have not moved to a fleet services initiative. This is something the previous comptroller and I had started to look in, and the current comptroller has now started to look at. We will involve all of our staff that currently work with our fleet, from our auto mechanics and DPW. So we have two mechanics, and then one that's an MEO mechanic that we actually just promoted into that position. We'll also include the folks at the police department that are in charge of their fleet, fire department that's in charge of their fleet, and DPW, because it houses code and others, they'll be the key. What we're doing is looking at this for a variety of reasons. One is we have equipment replacement program, which is in your budget, so you can see our equipment replacement. Page 82 is where that starts.
It's my favorite page.
I know. In the equipment, or 81 actually, is where the replacement program's 2025. These are all of the equipment that we're planning to replace each year. You will probably see some of these items next week when we talk about reductions. We are looking at trying to continue to replace these items on an ongoing basis, and with the fleet management program, they take on some of that coordination. They also have opportunities to purchase a larger expanded fleet offering, maintain mileage, and other pieces. I am going to turn it over to Adam to talk a little bit about kind of his first introduction to the fleet management program. What you will see in the budget is we made mentions of fleet management because I believe there could be potential long-term cost savings there. But we are just stepping into this. It would be a process. We would likely have to bid it or piggyback on a state bid. Our staff would be involved in all of the decision-making throughout, and then we would move from there. Go ahead.
So I think I've met with a couple of the potential, a couple of vendors that do this kind of thing. And the main thing is just trying to make our vehicle purchasing, vehicle maintenance more efficient. Right now, we've got a lot of different people involved, and you never kind of know how long the vehicle's going to be out for, and it's, unless you're really staying on top of it, we don't have a dedicated person that's really just focused on fleet nonstop. And so some good examples would be these companies could come in, and when everything's data-based. So when a vehicle gets a certain number of miles on it, they reach out to you and say, hey, you're reaching this amount of miles, time to do this or this. Each vehicle is its own contract, so we don't have to sign a long-term agreement with any particular company. They let us know if it's a better idea to lease, buy, using equity, having cash come back to us or come back to the city when selling the vehicle. So really, it's just an overall monitoring of our entire fleet that can be done very efficiently. They have the data there. It tracks just about everything. And we can also use that for our fuel as well. So we may not have to have a pump anymore, which would save us some money and aggravation, I think. So overall, it would just it's something that could make us run a lot more efficiently. And I think a lot of the people internally that would be involved are very excited about it, because there's a lot of good options there. And again, for me, it's all data based, and so everything breaks down to this is the best vehicle for this situation. If the vehicle needs a plow, okay, then this is the best vehicle for that situation. So really just kind of helping us go through the heavy lifting where we're just excited to get the vehicle and get to work with it. So again, 2025 project that we're working on, we've started it now, but definitely there's a lot of things that look very promising with that program.
Under your current costing for any vehicles, it does not include any economies of scale or any of that at this point. It includes the total cost that we anticipate for those vehicles. If we were to see that, what we may do is look at some of the vehicles we would be purchasing in future years that we've delayed and may bring them on board if there was enough savings. But at this point, when you see a vehicle, that is the anticipated cost at the time that we bid the vehicle. So all of our costs, just to be clear, because I don't know that we talked about this. It's not on. Thank you. See, this is why I can't control it myself. I'm going to ruin it for you guys. So with the vehicles, in the budget is what the bids are. What I wanted to just make sure that everyone is aware of is anytime you see a number in the budget, if it's done with the department head or with us, having not official bids, but conversations with a contractor to say, what do you think this truck is going to cost next year? And then we put it in. Then we have to go through our standard process. But all the numbers in the budget are based on those conversations of, if we were to do this work, how much would it cost? They're not kind of just coming out of thin air. So that's the piece on that. But for right now, the cost you see related to vehicles is based on the full price cost, not under the fleet management services, until we choose what fleet manager we would use.
Council Lavin?
So you have full-time mechanics working for the city?
We do currently.
Has it been a while since we costed out what contracting that work out versus the maintenance of employees on that would be?
So I think that's a piece of some of this conversation. One thing that I do want to be clear too with the fleet management piece is they will not do our large, heavy equipment, and they won't do fire trucks. I think you jokingly asked them that.
I did.
They won't do that, so we'll need to continue to have some mechanics on staff, but we do look at what is more effective.
Next.
So the next question is what staff is included in the city manager's budget versus the human resources budget, and how has this changed? So in the city manager budget, which is on page 28, the salary includes my salary, safety coordinator, and 10% of the human resources assistant. In the past, in 2023, it was my salary, and 2023 would have been probably 100% of the human resources assistant who was at that time in my office. This year we've shared, so 25% of that time is in my office and 75% is in human resources. And next year, we're moving her almost completely into human resources. And the safety coordinator was also included as something in the city manager's budget.
And the safety coordinator is a new position.
It's a current year position, one-time funded, so it's not ongoing funding.
Council Petropoulos.
Okay, but just for the record, we do not yet have one, as I understand.
No.
Okay, when would this be reposted?
So the safety coordinator would be reposted. My goal was to repost it after budget conversations because it may not be something that this council wants to go forward with, and so I'm not going to post it until that time.
I think the second half of that was the HR, or did you cover it?
So in the
In that
HR
conversation.
budget, you have a full-time department head and then 90% of an additional staff. In 2022, I believe we had introduced the idea of doing a deputy director. Or in 2023, we had looked at putting a deputy director in there. Through some changings with departments, instead of doing that, we moved that position into that budget further.
Let's keep moving.
All right. What is in contractual services lines and why has it increased overall? So Adam, I'll have you talk about that and where it is.
Okay. So if you go to page 9, you'll see comptroller, contractual services, the 24 budget, 75,450. The 25 budget, 91,300. So if you hold that page and then also go to page 34, you will see kind of the breakdown of what makes up those line items. So the way that we do it for this type of accounting is everything is considered a contractual service that isn't salary, benefits, or equipment. So anything on page 34, any of those line items that start with a 4, they're considered contractual. I know that's deceiving because it's not, let's see, conference expenses is not a contract we're having. That's just kind of the terminology the state uses when they put the chart of accounts together. So when you're looking at the contractual services on page 9, you'll see it says A1315.4. So those are what we refer to as the point fours. And the second part to that question was the increase. And the main reason for that increase was there's an amount in there, I'm not seeing the exact amount, but for electronic timekeeping for payroll. So currently we do manual timesheets, and we would love to get away from that so that we can do everything via electronics, phone, laptop, whatever, and make that process a lot smoother. So that's the reason for the increase there. And I think Amy went to get Peter to talk about IT, but happy to answer any questions in the meantime.
Can we stick on page 34?
Yes.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Counselor.
So, is there a breakdown or a justification associated with the $13,000 increase in computer supplies from one year to the next?
So I believe that is
A lot of computers?
I believe that is the financial software for the timekeeping and
Okay, so
payroll.
software is included in
Yep.
the supplies of computers?
Yes. Yep.
Computer costs. What is this software? That's pricey.
So we currently have a financial software. This is a module of that software that we don't currently have. So it would include the software and the training with it and kind of everything that goes along with it.
What will be the estimated carryover to 2026? Is it going to be another 13 grand every year?
No.
Or like, what's the upkeep after that?
Yeah, so the financial software itself has an annual maintenance cost. I don't know it off the top of my head, but it's for each module, I believe it's under 2,000. It depends on the module. So something like that is going to be less than our utility billing software, which is much more robust. So, I mean, I would estimate it at under 1,000 a year for annual maintenance because we already have a portion of it. So
Sure.
this added amount shouldn't really amount to very much.
Is it licensed per user? Like, do we have to watch out how many people are using it?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Ready to move on to the next one?
All right.
Go
Well, I
ahead.
think the second part of that question was like, where are the large areas of contractual increases? I didn't know if we went through that yet.
What is that?
What is in contractual services line? Why is it increased?
Oh, overall?
The
Well, there's
overall
a-
contractual
okay.
services.
Sorry, I was just
And
looking
maybe
at the comptroller.
I can draw our attention to page 11, because I think that's where your question might come from.
Okay.
Under buildings and grounds, line item number A, 7110.4.
Yeah, I went, just for my own,
Is that the one?
well, there's actually, I went and charted all the contractual services on the whole entire general fund budget line, and there's a few that bump up 2%, 3%, no percent. Like, there's a couple that are low, but there are a couple that are approaching almost 10%. We have a 9% increase in recreational administration contractual services. We have a 10% increase in player and rec center contractual services, and those are all the .4s. So that could be pencils and notebooks. We've got a 36% increase in planning and economic development contractual services. Stuff like that. So there's areas that kind of stand out. So I'm just wondering, like, what more are we buying?
Yeah, so I think if let's look at buildings and grounds, for example. So 7110 is the account number.
Yeah,
You'll-
they had the single highest jump, and
Yep.
it was so high I didn't even put a percentage next to it. I just put
So-
2 question marks and a frowny face.
So if you look at that one, trying to find where it would be.
It's
out here.
on page 58.
58.
Uh,
So that should,
58 is where, 58 is not buildings and grounds. Sorry, that's the first public works. Buildings and grounds is on page 60. And where you're gonna see the largest bumps in that is how we revamped that. So previously, public safety building expenses may go in different areas. So it might go under the police department. We put all of our buildings under this budget. And then we also increased ground maintenance by 200,000 for the pilot program. There's the lakefront building has additional, the gazebos, all of that. All of those one-time expenses that we talked about
Right.
are all lumped in there, and those are all considered contractual expenses. So that's where that huge increase came from,
And
for that one.
and for each department, if you go into the Appendix B portion of the budget, the page, either on the same page or the following page, will map out in the notes everything that was added to it.
I read some
And-
of that for
yeah.
maintenance and grounds already, and what stood out for me for most, which is kind of concerning for buildings and grounds, on that maintenance $200,000 number is, to me, and I wish Joe Venuti was here. It sounded like we're contracting out redundant services to things that our guys, I'm pretty sure, I thought were unionized to take care of. And I come from a union shop. You're not supposed to do that. Right? You're not supposed to hire things that your guys should be doing.
So Joe will be at the next meeting and we'll dive into that more. We're just using this as an example of those contractual services, and we'll dive into this question as well. Joe couldn't be here tonight. He's off today, so,
Okay.
but he will be back. I have, I think, 14 or 15 questions he started to respond to.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Council Petropoulos.
Real quick, since it came up, for example, I know for a fact the public safety building needs a new roof. What I also heard is that the county sheriff basically took over 3 of those rooms. You know, that unless something's changed, they took over a couple of rooms, and the police department has to do with less room. So the question is, if the sheriff's department is partially working out of our building, is the county chipping in for roof repairs? And if not, how can we make that happen?
So I'm not sure about the sheriff's department. I will tell you one thing that always gets very brought up is Office of Court Administration takes over a large percentage of that building. That is not at their cost all the time. They are really good partners, and I never want to talk badly about them because they do contribute, but they don't have to. We have to provide that service. Sheriff, I don't know. I'd have to talk to Chief more on what you're hearing and what's happening there.
Thanks again, just what they're telling me, so let's find out.
Next.
All right. So this is where Peter's going to come in and put the camera on himself before he appears. So he'll be in a moment, I believe. We're going to start talking about IT. There he is.
No entrance.
No entrance music, Peter?
From behind the camera.
Yes.
It's online
Good
only.
evening.
It's online only.
So we'll start off. I'll ask Peter these questions, but the first was talking about the IT vehicle. And a little background on if this is a second vehicle, why we need a second vehicle. There are people in the management and non-represented. We did just pass our remote or our flexible workplace. If a person were to be remote, would they get mileage? And how do the equipment lines and vehicle lines relate to one another? So Peter, I'll let you dive into the vehicle discussion.
Okay, so this is not second vehicle for the IT department. I am asking to replace the current vehicle, which is 2014 Ford Focus, and it's about time to replace it. Mileage, because I'm using the city vehicle, I'm not getting mileage. We pay mileage for second technician, what we have, and it's only for the mileage in the city. We are not paying any to come to Geneva or in Canandaigua. When he's in Canandaigua, Canandaigua pays mileage for him as well.
So, Peter, just clarification, not for the travel back and forth between
No.
the two cities. Okay.
He's not traveling between the cities. If we have to emergency, usually it's me. There would really have to be emergency. At that point, we would pay mileage as well. But I would say it happened once or twice. If he's scheduled to be in Geneva and there is emergency here and there is nobody here and he has to come here, at that point he has to use his vehicle. At that point we pay mileage. It's really a very emergency. It happened once, twice, most in the last 5 years.
And then if a staff is remote, they do not get mileage for coming into work. If there's an emergency and they're remote and they come in, then they're just reporting to work. There's no mileage given. Oh, Councilor Petropoulos, I think, has a question
Sorry,
here.
Councilor Petropoulos?
The 2014 Ford Focus, I think I remember that one. Now, this is a vehicle you only use when traveling around Geneva, or does it go to Canandaigua too?
I am taking the vehicle home and I'm taking it to Canandaigua as well.
So the question then becomes, is Canandaigua chipping in, seeing as we get the wear and tear on the vehicle?
So it's under our shared contract. We do a piece of it, but not the entire thing. It's our vehicle and it's our property, so when we resell it, it is our vehicle and our property, so we get the money back on it.
Okay.
Councilor Peeler?
So is it a contractual obligation to provide this vehicle?
It is not, because Peter is a non-representative
Okay.
person.
So it's not part of a piece of,
There's no contract.
you know what I mean? It's not
so-
part of a labor agreement?
It's not a labor agreement. The reason we do provide it to the IT director is because we do expect him to be available 24/7 to come to City Hall if there is a need, or the police department, more frequently, police or fire or others if those systems go down. Ready for the next set of questions for Peter? He's ready.
Yes.
What is in the IT equipment line, and why has this changed over time or hasn't changed?
So IT equipment line is basically any technology equipment not related to the network. So I would say it's printer, scanner, any AV needs, audio, video, any physical security, security camera, security doors, door access, anything which is not for the networking. I would say last 5 years, I asked for 15,000 for this equipment. That's basically what we end up. It's the good amount. last few years for this, under this budget line, we added money for the downtown security camera project. That was okay by council to add this amount of money. At this point, we stopped this security project because in case of the Wi-Fi signal in the downtown, we started having issue with the connection for the security cameras. And like past few years, we added few cameras on the lakefront, and we still have another 5-8 locations between the lakefront and between downtown. But because the issues with the connection, we stopped the new locations until we will figure out what has to be done with the connections. Because we start losing the connections to the security cameras, it was hard to work with that. So at this point, we paused these projects until we'll find a solution. This is why I did not increase any money for next year, and I'm asking the 15,000, which basically we use for the city use, for the city offices and city hall.
Currently, there's about 100,000 that we've rolled over that is going to be put into those increased cameras. It's working with Peter, he's working with DPW and the police department and our contractor to get the services back up so we can get those increased cameras up and rolling before we increase further.
Council Petropoulos?
So obviously, the cameras around the city, there were a lot more of them than 10 years ago when I moved here. What service are we using? Radio based? Are we using any kind of cables? How do those cameras work?
Well, in the buildings, the cameras are connected by cable. Obviously, in the downtown, we have radio. We are using LTE radio connections, which is connected to the city hall. So the main radios are on the top of the city hall, and the receivers are, each camera has its own receiver.
So basically, what I understand from having talked to the police department is not all the cameras work, obviously. And is this because of the radio connection, or are you figuring it out? I know that,
Yes.
and that's fine, but
Yes, in case, wireless signals from all other providers start kind of messing up with our connection, so we try to figure
Okay.
out the connection.
thanks.
Council Peeler?
Anyone can jump on this question. So in 2022, we did not spend anything on public access television because we do everything in-house now.
That's the next question.
Oh, is it really?
Yep.
Oh. Sorry, I'm
Number seven.
just going through it.
Want me to go to it, or do you want?
Let's go to it.
All right. So the next question is just what is in the public access line and how is it used? And Peter has explanation on
Yeah,
that.
I figured it was a good segue.
So the public access previously was the FLTV, when they did the video or the meetings, so we hire FLTV for that. So there was the 17,500. It was, council canceled it completely, but with the COVID and with the public asking for it, we went back to the live videos. At that point, we figured out it's much cheaper to do it in-house. So I believe last year we spent about 4,700, and that is basically stipend for the IT technician or me when we are providing the video for the council.
So I mentioned that in my email. If that's salary and overtime, why is it under contractual services or in a 4,000 line?
So it is not salary or overtime. It is a stipend that goes above and beyond what is included in those two positions. Those two positions don't include the provision of these services, and so we provide them that stipend funding, which comes from that line.
I'm having a hard time reconciling that because you say our technicians are available 24/7, but they get a stipend for
But they're
running
not-
the technology.
They're not available for broadcasting purposes. That's not in their job descriptions.
Interesting. Okay. So that stipend is for labor.
It's for labor per each meeting.
Gotta quit having so many meetings.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next question. Why is there an increase in network security costs?
Okay, so network security budget line is basically my networking line, which including mainly the network closet and switches and basically anything to do with the network. Unfortunately, because Microsoft licensing, every 2 to 3 years they are updating license and operating system for the Windows servers. At this point, we are running server 2019. Next year is the year I usually skip the one license so that we didn't update to 2022. Next year is the year then we need to update it to 2025. Unfortunately, just the licensing for the servers will cost us about, say, 30,000. We need license for every user, and altogether it will be about 30,000. So this is why it is more than every year what I'm asking for. That includes, the yearly replacing switches and NAS drives and any IT equipment needs what is to be in the server closet.
I'm smiling, Peter, because that's a different language for me when you
Yes.
start talking that,
Sorry.
especially Microsoft licenses and updating Windows.
Yes.
That's painful. I don't even like a new cell phone.
Unfortunately, there's almost no way we cannot skip it. Because the 2019 in year or two will end the support for that and we have to move it. So this is why we are skipping the one license. So this one will happen every 5 to 6 years.
Are we historically under budgeting for that? And here's why I say that, because in 2022, we budgeted for 40,000 for that, but the actual came in at 70,000. In 2023, we budgeted for, in 2023, we budgeted for 45,000. It came in at 70. This last year, we budgeted, or for 2024, we budgeted for 40. Is it gonna come in higher? In 2022, the actual, it came in at 57. So do we historically budget over $10,000 under for network security? If our actuals are consistently higher than what we budget for?
It may be. I don't, I mean,
I
historically.
mean, I'm sorry, it was before you got here,
But no, that may be, and we may be getting closer with the 60,000 to getting to the actuals.
it took me several years to realize that the actual was even happening and that what we approve isn't actually the thing.
Right.
And what cued me into that was a grant that we transferred to the Parrott Hall. And I noticed our budget was $700,000 off in the actual, and I was like, where's this money going or coming from? And I was told, it takes years for the budgets to resolve,
Yes, it does.
right? So I'm just kind of wondering if that's something that we need to be on top of and we start historically budgeting for more accurate
So,
networks.
so through the third quarter of this year, network security, we budgeted 40,000, we've spent 12.
Okay.
So I don't know for the fourth quarter what we
It's
need
gonna
for
land,
that, but
right?
that just to give you an idea of where we stand as of
And I'm just
now.
going by the last 3 years.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's definitely something to continue to watch. And we tend to look at, when I build the budget, I look to see where those lines have changed. And then we look at what data we have as actuals in August when we create
Yeah,
the budget.
in my opinion, less change is less budget shock and it manages expectations. So it's just that.
I can almost talk like I know what I'm talking about when I talk about network security. Is that phishing and all that other stuff and firewalls and okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Council
We can
Petrone.
get something else.
Actually, I know we were talking about it earlier, but does it also include the cost of training for that? I know we have to do training we did it in the military too, make you aware of phishing scams. Is that included in the IT budget or is that coming from another pot?
We do a yearly phishing training.
Okay,
and
so that does
that's-
come out of IT then.
Yes, but we don't even pay for that. It's included.
No, we do. So the phishing training and those things, if there is training expenses, they're coming out of the city manager's budget in the training line. But the phishing training usually we can get for free. It's an online training.
Okay.
All right, Peter, let's talk about Civic Plus. Why the cost increase in Civic Plus and how are we using it?
So I believe from my notes, we started about 6,700. Basically, that was in the contract was minimum 2% increase every year, but this year they increased their price. So at this point, we are about 8,800 we paid this year for the website. That was on their side increase.
And Civic Plus hosts our websites. Each department is responsible for updating the websites, using the website as time allows them to do so. There is not anyone designated to maintain our website. It's not designated to Peter or anyone else. It's each department. And I think one of the things that we had talked about or has come up, if we were to migrate our website from Civic Plus to another website or something like that, there would be a cost to do that in addition. But Civic Plus we utilize to host our websites. They also have a couple other products that they provide. So Peter, I don't know if you have other things to add in.
Just so it's not that much, but there's hosting also including the SSL certificate for the website. It includes the domain registration and also includes at this point 1,000 users for the send a text notification. That was included in the package. If we would need more text notifications, at that point they are sending another package for 500 users. The emails are unlimited, but for the text, they actually charge per user, which we have 1,000. I think that's at this point, it's enough. So we don't need, but there would be another addition.
So I have a quick question.
Sure.
I
Councilor Paul.
actually have a question on the status of this because the history of this migration from the old web host, which was GoDaddy, into Civic Plus was we had a security issue. We were having security issues, and
Yes.
has the security issues that were associated with our domain, are they,
Yes, at that point, yes.
have they been
Absolutely.
resolved and we're
Absolutely,
not getting any more? It was never really explained to us the kind of the scope of the security issues, so I'm hoping that they've just kind of stopped, or we've,
Yes, that stop. Since we migrate the website to Civic Plus, we did not have that issue.
okay. And the second component of why we moved to Civic Plus was that the public and many counselors thought our old website was not aesthetically pleasing, nor did it have modern tools or a modern layout and feel. So has Civic Plus continued to develop their tools, and maybe we can look into using them.
So we utilize a lot of their tools currently. Again, it's a limitation on who's doing the tools. So we were talking earlier, our police department and fire department shares the same person who happens to be a volunteer for one department and a sergeant at the other. And as he's available to do it, he updates their site and keeps on top of it. That's great. Other departments don't have that dedication. So depending on it, we do have 2 staff that spearhead some of our communications work, and they utilize those tools. So you'll see forms, you'll see actually all of our benefits for the first time. It got launched yesterday, is all live on our website. That's a change. Our policies are now on there. So they are utilizing those tools, and Civic Plus provides us a lot of tools. I think there's 1 or 2 that we don't use for some reasons. I know job postings we don't use because the county is in charge of our job postings, so it doesn't make sense for us to use that tool.
Yep.
Yes, basically they are based on modules, and there is
Yes.
only 2 modules we don't use. One is the job posting, and one is, I think, like you would say, complain, residents complain, which we are using just the email for that.
And my last question is, when our staff makes the changes to the website, do they do it under a cohort policy? Are they a power user or a contributor? They're not technically an administrator to the website? Like, how are they logging in and making changes?
There is few administrators, but usually each department, they have access only to specific models, what they need, or their own pages.
And who sets that up? You? Do you give them
Yes,
permissions?
I'm the one setting it up.
Very good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
Okay, thank you.
I was going to say the other questions about Peter was on his position, but we answered those last time unless people had follow-ups on that because he is here for you right now.
I just got a question on one of the budgets, on the subscription.
Is it IT related?
Yeah.
Okay.
it's on the-
Yep. I just want to make sure we
If
didn't
you
have
can
Peter
use your
hanging out.
microphone.
I'm sorry,
Thank you.
is this on?
The subscriptions, I noticed in 2023, they're for about 40,000, 2024, there's 60,000, your budget 2025, 80,000. Is that gonna be incremental 20,000 approximately every year?
Unfortunately, we have no control for that. There was the big example where we have the virtual server, VMware. We go up from 2,000, I got quote to 20 after the company was purchased. They did go down, but this is something what basically any software, anything what we need, and I don't have control about it. And basically, we go with the minimum what we need. There is nothing, extra. So I don't have control about that.
So you really don't know what the figures are really actually gonna be then?
Yes, I go year by year basically, and yes. Sorry.
Anything else? Okay, thank you, Peter.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So that hits our list. Next is an opportunity that I'm going to take to make a motion on page 44. It's not a big move, but it's one that I consider close to my heart. It's line item number 6326.4062 for $10,000 for Cornell Ag Tech Food Park. I would like to make a motion to strike that from the budget.
Second.
Seconded by Counselor Peeler. Discussion.
Thank you.
Well, I just,
What do we give that money for?
I can provide that
Thank you.
background. So this has been funding that we have provided over time since the inception of the tech farm. It's going to that tech farm program, which is not, it's a partnership between Cornell, the city, and then the entities that create the tech farm. We've used that money to really support general operations to that project and that program. So Tech Farm 1 was completed several years ago. Tech Farm 2 is in the building stage. They'll be doing a groundbreaking next year. And really it was a broad general operations to help further city economic development goals, allowing support to their staffing to continue to recruit businesses to use that tech farm. That amount has been reduced over time. I can't remember which budget it is in at this point. Is it in my budget or is it in
Office of Planning and Economic
Planning and Economic Development? It's gone from both budgets. Yep, there it is. So it has been reduced. Last year it was not invoiced. It has been invoiced for this year. I know Adam's seen that invoice already come across. We kept it in as a partnership effort, but that is completely up to council to decide.
And I'm definitely not against a partnership effort. I was just looking for, this tech farm's been there for quite a few years, and I was looking for more benefit to the city in a variety of different ways. The incubation of businesses there hasn't provided a spin-off to the city, jobs, employments. There was a lot of great things that we were looking for from the tech farm that we haven't seen yet. If we could reestablish that relationship with some kind of return on our investment, I'd be happy to look at it in the future. Councilor Brennan and then Councilor Peeler.
Just a question, are those parcels tax exempt?
Yes.
It depends on the use of the parcel. There could be some revenues on it depending on what they're in tech farm. Depending on who the business owner is in that parcel, if they are paying taxes on it, they may not be fully exempt parcels. Because this, again, is not just a Cornell project. It's a partnership between all of those entities as well as ESD and others. I do think that with the expansion, they're very excited about the expansion and kind of the churn from Tech Farm. What has been nice is between planning and economic development, we've had some great conversations about incubating there, and then these businesses are looking for spaces to grow that are larger, and so we've had some conversations about the GEDC and other spaces as well.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Peeler.
What was that acronym? ESD? Is that Empire State?
Development.
Yep.
Yeah, so this is an Empire Zone, correct?
I don't even know if we use that term anymore, but
I
it
was
used
gonna
to be.
say.
Oh, we used to.
Yeah,
We used to. We were just talking about opportunity zones and
I know
empire zones, and did
businesses-
they go away?
I
or
know
not?
for profit organizations that exist in Empire Zones and they are not paying taxes. So, because that they never did before. That was the whole idea of the incubation process in Empire zones.
Yeah, and I remember credits, because I remember we did
Yeah.
Wilmrite credits at
I don't know.
the
Yeah.
mall and stuff, so.
When I looked into this, I didn't consider this a major victory, but definitely something that we can do without, and it was an easy choice. We began giving to the tech farm in 2022. Is that right, Adam? I mean, I don't remember it in any other budget item.
No, it's been quite a while. I
It's-
think
Or did we pause
it
for a couple
hasn't
years?
always been a straight $10,000 allocation. I think in way back when it was project based, so it was we would contribute so much for a certain project.
When a request came in or something was
Exactly,
presented.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't
Going
even.
back,
I'm not even opposed to that, but just a blanket hit is
Sure.
not. Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely, going back, it's been much greater than 10,000. We've started to reduce it over time.
Thank you.
Have we informed Ms. Smart that we're going to end this?
So she's a board, I should also say that, I'm sure our lawyers would say, I am a member of the board of the tech farm, which could be a conflict, but she is a member of the board. She does not oversee this. This is a separate from the entity. I will inform all the board members tomorrow.
So we haven't asked them to make a case for themselves?
No, I had reached out to Brendan earlier today, but didn't connect with him, so,
Just trying to be a good neighbor.
yep,
Yep, I agree.
absolutely.
I'd be happy to have that conversation. I want a piece of land that they have. I've been looking for that for a long time. I'd love to sit down at the table and have that conversation. Anything else? Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Brennan?
Aye.
Counselor Lavin?
No.
Counselor Peeler?
Aye.
Counselor Gilat?
Aye.
Counselor Petropoulos?
Aye.
Counselor Morocco?
Aye.
Counselor Whitfield?
Nay.
Mayor Valentino?
Aye.
Carried.
So, Counselor Peeler, just to let you know before you came in, Counselor Petropoulos, well, you're speaking kind of for him and you, I think, but trying to provide direction to the city manager. We went round and round and had a lot of discussion, but the city manager is going to come back to us with a 4 to 5% look at a budget that will come back to the council on options that we will have to get to that 4 to 5%. So that's a 5-6?
5 to 6 of
5 to
items
6.
to reduce, not a
Okay.
full budget redone,
Yeah.
but I'll give you
Okay, I
items.
just want to let you know that that was going on.
Thank you.
Yep.
Is there anything that, because Counselor Petropoulos and I spoke earlier, and one of the things that might have inspired that conversation was I took a look at the last 6 years of budgets. And our levy, on average, has increased 3.9% per year, some being as high as 8.5, some being as low as 0.3. So I didn't consider it a controversial request to have a budget within that realm. So even a 3.9% increase in taxable levy collection would be average. So something even more is, something in the realm of 6. That's a 40% increase to the average. So I would consider that a compromise, a fiscal compromise to true fiscally conservative people that want to give a gentle raise versus people who want to give it more of a liberal raise.
We're going to have some things to look at and
Right.
decide.
I don't mean politically, I just mean like gravy. You can either get a little bit of gravy or you can be liberal with the gravy, you know what I mean?
I would suggest maybe you go back and watch the beginning of the meeting. There was a lot of discussion.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Anything further? Because I'm going to look for a motion to adjourn.
Did Counselor Peeler, did you not want to make
We
your
got one left?
motion?
Motion 11?
It's on this piece.
I do want to make that motion. Thank you. Do I have to give any background or can I just hit it?
You can hit it, and our Director of Planning and Economic Development's in the building too, to provide any questions you may have on that too.
All right, so I'd like to make a motion to move the farmer's market back to the downtown region, and that would be tied to the funding associated with it.
Second.
Discussion. Councilor Petropoulos?
Yeah, I remember when the farmer market was downtown, the suggestion was that it be moved to the Seneca Street parking lot. And I've gone to the farmer's market at the lake. I don't think it's as well attended as it would be downtown. It's a very long walk, especially when you're carrying heavy bags back. I think if it were downtown, we get a lot more foot traffic, we get a lot more locals, et cetera. So I'm all for it.
Council Peeler and then Council Brennan.
So this topic was associated with feedback that I received from residents and downtown businesses that truly lament that the farmers market is not downtown anymore. And the farmers market served as a tool to connect people from downtown to other areas. It was an attractor to our downtown region. And based on my experience and my perception, we still want to bring people downtown. Downtown is still the heartbeat and the focal driver of our community, and we want those small businesses to get peripheral business from the foot traffic generated by the farmers market. So that's why I wanted the farmers market downtown, just because it's been requested to me by dozens of people. Why don't we have it downtown? Some people are so desperate for it, they're willing to say, can we just have it downtown once in a while? Like, that's how desperate they are. Right? When you're so desperate that you'll take something versus nothing, that you should listen to that. You should really listen to that. Secondly, is it looks to be that the farmers market's getting more expensive year to year since we've brought it to the lake. So I don't know if that's more overhead associated with moving it to the lake. I don't know. But it does appear that the farmers market is a cost that's increased. So I don't know if that's just general doing business costs, or if it's just because, or maybe it is because it's down at the lake and there's less amenities.
Before you jump in, David, there's something that I forgot that Adam and I have started to work on, a question that you guys had about showing some of the revenues and expenses and where they're coming in and out of the budget. And so I know Adam started to work on it to get you some of that. One thing I do want to call your attention to is the extra helpline in the farmers market is
Page
actually
44.
on page 44, 48.
I'm on 44 and I see it at 1004.1980.
Yeah, apparently I have different numbers. I'm looking at last year's budget, I just realized. But it'll have the same thing. That extra helpline is something that is done in partnership with New York State, because we share that with the state because it's at the Welcome Center. I just want to make sure that that's clear, because that's a revenue we do bring in. And then expend.
Right. To pile on that, the main expense of the farmer's market is that $5,000 extra helpline. That is 100% reimbursed by the state. If the farmer's market were in any other location, it would not be.
Okay.
So other than that, I think most of our farmer's market expenses are actually down.
Yeah, okay.
The allocation is down in this year compared to last year.
I appreciate that update, because that's not readily easy,
That's a function.
justifiable from them looking at the budget.
Council Brennan and then Council Lavin.
Well, I think I'll hold my remarks because I think David has his own.
Sure, if you're turning to me.
Sure.
So there's a few things that I just want to bring up about this. I think the first one is that important instance of almost all of the funding for the farmers market is currently provided by the state through the Welcome Center. So if we moved it, that would be a significant increase in our budget that would need to go to support a market in a different location.
Why?
What's that?
Why?
Because it takes manpower, and right now the state pays for that manpower.
Why does the state pay for our farmers market?
Because they like that it's bringing people near the Welcome Center.
So we're competing with the state between our downtown and our lakefront.
No, the idea, I'm sorry.
So
I understand.
the funding is from Ag and Markets.
I get it.
Yeah. So Ag and Markets likes to increase our tourism and sell New York products at the Welcome Center. So they are funding that large portion, almost all of our farmers market expenses with that collaboration. The other thing that I think is important is that the farmers market exists and has grown dramatically because of the vendors, right? The vendors are there voluntarily. In fact, they pay to be there. So if we want to direct, to move, or to significantly change the farmers market, I am concerned that we would end up back in a place where we don't have very many vendors. We've had a really significant improvement in the amount of vendors. I'm curious, how many of you have visited the farmers market this year, because we have had an average of around 30 vendors at the market every week, with the highest being 42 vendors. That makes a huge difference compared to in the past, where there was frequently half a dozen to a dozen vendors. It makes it a thing that people will actually bother to go to. And it has a pile-on effect. So if we run into a situation where, you know, we're cutting the vendors in half, it's not something that they want to be a part of, it's not as lucrative, it's a pile-on effect. It creates a snowball, and it can kill the market. And I think that I want to, give props to Liz Toner, who's done an amazing job at really bringing back a lot of vitality to the farmers market. A lot of that came with the choice to have a market at the lakefront. I love the idea of also having a market downtown. I would love to see funding that would allow us to do that. I have some great ideas about how it could be effective, particularly, a weekday. I'd love to see that happen. I don't have anything against that. But I do think that we would be in a really difficult situation if we went to move the Saturday market away from the location it's currently in.
Why again?
Because I don't think as many vendors would want to come.
So there's something wrong with our downtown,
No,
based on their perception.
I think there's less traffic, foot traffic. Obviously, the lakefront is a beautiful venue. People love to be there. People love coming for that. And the Welcome Center is a huge attractor. So it gets a lot of customers to come there and patronize the market.
I went to the farmer's market this year. It was beautiful. And what I noticed that was a paradigm shift in the theme of the venue was there was a significant amount of craft sellers, people not selling produce. And I'm just wondering, is it more now a bazaar or something like that than it is a farmer's market?
I don't think
Right.
that's the case. I
It
can
was a
tell you.
significant amount of
I can tell
crafts.
you that it is definitely the most difficult, and it takes a lot of work to continue getting the food vendors, especially the farmer vendors. The raw food, it's the most difficult thing to get, and our staff works really hard to build relationships to keep people coming back, because that's quite honestly the lowest profit portion of the market. So we do a lot of work to make sure that we're covering the bases of having the variety of food types, to get the produce, to get the meat. That takes the most work. It's easy to get the other folks. A lot of people have wares that they want to sell, but
Yeah.
we work really hard to get the other vendors, and we're constantly in danger of losing them.
Sure. I mean, but that is the reason why New York State Ag gives us the money, right? I mean, if they found out it was just necklaces and crystals, would they be giving us the money?
I couldn't say, but
Yeah.
it's certainly not just necklaces and crystals.
No, I know, but there was a significant amount of crafts at the last farmer's market that I was on to, over half.
Counselor, there's other people that would like to
Yeah, I
jump in.
understand.
Counselor Brennan, and Counselor Levin,
I wanna
and
make sure
Counselor
we're doing the right
Petropoulos. Yeah, and I want to make sure everybody gets the floor.
Well, what he said. But I did also want to point out that that was the idea behind creating the entire DRI Lakeshore Drive, which was to cause downtown to go to the lakefront and vice versa, to cause those visitors to the lakefront to visit Geneva. So it's in our favor, if you will, for no other reason than morally to stick to it. And whether or not a farmer's market sells produce is kind of slicing it thin, if you don't mind, because all farmers markets have crafts and other events, caricature artists, etc. It's all under the same roof. It's fine. So I'll be voting to keep the farmers market where it is.
Counselor Levin.
I know this is probably beating a dead horse too, but I'm a big fan of what they've done and built in Ithaca over years. It's in a swamp. It's got crappy parking. It's in a bad place to get to, and yet it's an attraction that has spawned new restaurants, new vendors, and I think we have the low-cost opportunity to do something really different with this. Is you have a recreation center that sits there from the day you stop making ice, and it's a draw on the city's resources. It's an indoor-outdoor venue, could have music, stage, building, something you could build and start building around to get vendors who would probably rent if they could set up once a year, once for the term and leave their stuff there. I think if we had some ambition to follow in to see it as a longer-term revenue thing, that would be my choice. It was pretty unimpressive next to the what we used to call the Men's Resource Center at the, what's the name of that cigar shop next door to the old location for the market? Barudi's?
Barudi's? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't think it was impressive there, but you also staffed it out of the recreation department, I think, generally, wasn't it? Run by,
In the past.
in the past. What are the new costs over there, setting up tents?
No, so the staff doesn't set up tents, staff manages the market. So, we have 30 to 50 vendors at a time that need direction of where to go, where their space is. We also manage the SNAP program. So we go through the administrative process to make it available for people who use SNAP to use their funding at the market, to track that, to distribute funds to the various vendors. Obviously, we collect the vendor fees. Our staff is booking these vendors and being proactive and going out to find them because, again, if you have, just like if you have an empty downtown, it's not an attractant. If you have an empty farmer's market, it's not an attractant. So that's where the staff time goes. It's managing the market, getting the vendors, recruiting vendors, following up with relationships, organizing them when they're there. Just like any kind of temporary thing at campground, you need someone who's there who tells people where their spot is.
Sure.
Managing those things.
But it's not a big number anyway, though,
What's
across the costs across the year.
no?
No. So,
I mean, this is a very, very minuscule component of even my department's budget, much less the city's budget.
if I was the bid, I'd be arguing to do the work to make something more elaborate happen downtown. Saturdays and Sundays are a pain downtown because tourist season is here, and yet most of the businesses still close on Sunday. And you could have something there that is part of it, but I think, priorities are, and money will determine this, I think.
Council Petropoulos.
I think there's plenty. Basically, I've been to the farmer's market. I never found it horrendously well attended, even on nice summer days. Most of the folks that I saw down there were basically people with cars, and by their appearance, people with more money than I have. I'm thinking if we moved it back downtown, particularly to Seneca Street, and that parking lot across from the Smith, you're going to see more foot traffic because we locals are going to go out and, hey, this is another place we can get produce. And yes, fully half the tents were tchotchkes and candles and whatever. Not that that matters. You could have the same thing downtown. You'll probably get more business. We're not an empty downtown. There is foot traffic, but people downtown are not just going to go to the lakefront to get food and then have to lug those bags back. So those that want to walk can walk. Those that can drive, there's tons of parking. Those two underutilized lots, as well as the back half of the Seneca Street lot, I don't see a reason we can't move it downtown. And the fact is, we're budgeting the state building for $75,000 for new doors. I mean, I don't know that we're getting a lot out of there. We could probably make up. I don't even know what the revenue is from the farmers market. Do you have an idea what that revenue is? Now that it's been at the lakefront?
Like sales tax?
What's that?
You mean like sales tax? What do you mean?
Anything,
They pay for this-
what's
they
in
pay
it for
the
us?
sites.
I think that downtown, people would be more likely to at least look around the businesses. Businesses are only closed Sunday because some businesses are open on Sundays. I know a couple in my block are open. So I think it's a good idea to move it all back downtown. Otherwise, really limiting the potential of it. That's all I have to say.
I'm going to come back to you in a minute, but I have a suggestion because I'm hearing positive things and just in different terms, I believe. I go down there every Saturday, and I'm the guy that cruises through on the fat tire bike, and so I think it's important that we kind of take into context everything. And I guess I'm just going to ask the motion was to not fund unless it moves. The funding really is reimbursed, so it's a net zero in a lot of ways, so I don't know if that really has an impact, but I think what I'm hearing from Planning and Economic Development, some of the counselors here, you know, and not just, the windmill is another great opportunity. If you go down to the windmill, it's fantastic. They've built, a farmer's market that is just very attractive. People drive miles and miles to go there, and but they've built that somehow throughout a period of time, and I heard David say he's got some good ideas. So I'm wondering if we can't have a win here somehow, a win-win, where it stays there, because we've talked about having it down at Bicentennial Park. We've had it on Exchange Street next to Brody's. We've had it over on Seneca Street. So it's moved around, and there's been talk about having it in the recreation complex also. So a lot of that has taken place, but how do you take what you got now and expand upon it? And whether it's a Sunday opportunity because there is limited businesses open, or whether you find a new location, whether it's indoors or outdoors, I just think there's opportunities there. So I think maybe better that council directs staff to say, how do we grow the farmer's market? How do we get some of it in downtown? And you mentioned something that, just even a partial act, and we have it there sometimes. Well, is there a nights or a weekend opportunity where we can start building upon that to draw more business into downtown? I'd rather give staff direction than vote on funding that's cost neutral. Councilor Peeler?
I agree. I always prefer giving staff direction than taking a red marker and striking through the budget. I really think giving staff direction is the way to go. And now that I'm uncovering that the state is giving us money, I'm not necessarily keen on weaning myself from the udder of New York State, and I want that sweet milk. So, but I do think an opportunity exists to offer a farmer's market component, maybe during the week. I'd like to hear some creative ideas. And the fact remains, if SNAP is a big part of our farmer's market, let's be honest, that's going to be more attractive in the center of our city than at the lakefront.
Yep.
Okay, so that's going to be something to think about too. The lakefront isn't necessarily what we consider a spot to go pick up SNAP.
If I may, I think one thing
Sure.
too to consider in this, and I think David mentioned it, is if we're to do a review in the next year of how to do this and maybe try some things, we also have to be cognizant of our vendors, and that's what he brought up, is we've had this discussion a little bit with vendors, and we did that in the study, in the initial study. We may have to think about what that strategy looks like and then where this work plan fits in, because that's the other piece, is it's not our... I give Liz tons of credit because this is a lot of her work, but then she expands that work by having her additional staff support us. So we may have to look at some of those kind of models of, if we're going to expand it, there may need to be additional staff support to it.
Okay.
I also
Councilman?
wonder if there's the unspoken other people who might be interested with a more solid surrounding. Bostrom Farms, for example, the meat people who, if given a consistent indoor place with power that they could count on for time, that we're not surveying them as we're looking for new.
We are looking at, well, we were when we were doing kind of that farmer's market study, which
Right.
we haven't moved towards, but I think that's a piece of it, is understanding that, and not saying that we're going in that direction, but just understanding that there's multiple ways to do this.
Right.
So, Counselor, can I ask you to withdraw the motion? Or do you want to vote on it? Doesn't matter either way.
I think that we need some more definitive direction, because wait and see what happens, but really we're just going to do whatever the vendors want, and we know that the lake is the pearl. So why would they give up their awesome venue? And we're worried about putting it in different locations because the vendors don't like the clientele in the other locations. I'm not interested in that either. So I think I'm going to make an amendment to the resolution that says collectively we would like to see the farmers market exist once a week in downtown Geneva, So the motion will read, instead of moving the farmer's market downtown, we would like to see the farmer's market designate a weekly, a weekday schedule for the farmer's market to be downtown.
A suggestion?
Just a question. Are you suggesting that we allocate funding to
No, I'm
enable us to staff a downtown farmer's market?
No, we can use some of that state money, right?
No.
Why not?
It
It's,
can only be done at the
allocated
lakefront with the state money.
So they're not giving us money, they're making us submit receipts and then they reimburse us?
they reimburse for our time that's allocated to the waterfront farmer's market. That's the specific use.
So
let's
it's
not-
like a MAP grant, we have to submit requests?
Let's
They-
try
they-
not to make this too complicated. I understand your motive,
This is-
and I'd like to
The
support it.
residents and businesses want to see the farmer's market downtown.
Okay, let's,
We fund it enough.
How many residents and how many
All right.
businesses?
I think we're just gonna call the vote on this one.
Everyone that I've talked to,
We're
I
gonna,
don't know,
Okay.
we're gonna call,
5 dozen?
clerk, we're gonna call the vote on the motion that Counselor Peeler put on the floor and Counselor Petropoulos seconded, please.
Counselor Brennan?
Nay.
Counselor Lavin?
No.
Counselor Peeler?
Well, hold on, what about the amendment that I just put forward? You skip past that? Can we get a motion on the
You went
amendment?
right into a resolution, and this was a motion on the budget.
No, I understand,
So
but
if we're gonna put a
I asked for, hold on, let me finish.
But if you're gonna amend your motion, it should be directed towards the budget. If
And
you
it
wanna
will-
put a
and it-
resolution.
And it will be. Hold on, let me get the vernacular that's on the sheet, and I'll say it again, because I think it's important. And it's reflexive of what our residents and businesses want to see. Hold on, it's in a little green area. Here it is, right here. So it read, only provide funding to the farmer's market if it's moved back to downtown location. So I'd like it to say, only provide funding to the farmer's market if we can get the farmer's market on a weekday relocated to a downtown location.
I think if you're gonna make an amendment, you should say, provide funding.
I'm just going by what this says.
I know it, but you're trying to remove funding that is a zero net. You're trying to shift funding that's compensated by the state.
I'm not
So
sure if that's
if-
entirely grossly true.
Well,
Is
that's
that-
what staff is telling
I
us.
just don't, we put our money in a pot, and you're telling me that you can go back and find every dollar that's on this budget associated with what we fund the farmer's market and tie it to a piece of income that comes from the state or somewhere else?
So the $5,000 that's allocated for the extra help line has to be where it's located. It is a state allocation for that. The other 2 or 3 farmers market lines could potentially be moved, but some of them are tied to SNAP as well. So, I mean, you're talking the entire, I don't have it in front of me, I just did. Hold on just a moment.
Yeah, well, nobody's going to the lakefront to buy a clay pot with SNAP.
So, for the farmers market lines, you have the $5,000, which that would be what you're talking about, Mayor. That has to be used for the farmers market at the lakefront, or else that's gone. And then you have materials and supplies, 1,500, which is there, and then you have something else. Events, farmers market, 1,000.
Which that is actually the
Concerts.
concert series.
That's concert series. And then nutrition programs, farmers market, which is SNAP, is 2,000. So you could move that to that, but those are your only lines really, is that 2,000 and your 1,500.
So the
They're-
2,000 and the 1,500 lines are the only two lines that we technically don't have reimbursements associated with them.
Correct.
Correct, that
So
are
that's
going to the
30, so
farm.
that's $3,500.
Correct, that's going to the farmer's market.
And that $3,500 would not support a weekly farmer's market, and any of the locations mentioned are got Bicentennial Park. You've got I call the hydrant hose parking lot. You've got the Smith Opera House. That $3,500 isn't enough to fund
That's what we currently
a
use.
weekly.
That's what we currently use to support the once a week. So everything that's in the budget is actually a reduction over last year on how we support just the lakefront. So if you wanted to allocate that much again for us to do a second.
No, I'm just gonna withdraw the motion because there's the money that I wanted to withhold apparently isn't ours to begin with. And that's silly, and I'm not here to do anything silly.
But yeah, don't get frustrated because I think there's
Too late.
opportunity here.
Yeah, I think there is too.
Okay,
Yeah.
so now I'll consider another motion to adjourn. Council Petropoulos, seconded by Council Brennan. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you very much, staff.